Welcome to British Focus, the channel where we dissect the political circus with a healthy dose of irony. And today, we have a treat for you. Angela Rayner, the Labour Party's very own walking contradiction, has done it again. Yes, the woman who struggles to keep track of her own words is back in the spotlight, tripping over her statements like a contestant on a dodgy game show. This time, she faced tough questions on Sky News about, wait for it, housing. A crucial issue, you'd think, requiring clear and consistent policies. But instead, we got the usual Labour chaos, confused answers, contradictions, and a desperate attempt to sound like she actually knows what she's talking about. Spoiler alert, she doesn't. We'll break it all down, exposing the holes in her arguments and the absurdity of her claims. But before we dive into this masterclass in political gymnastics, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more content that holds the so-called leaders accountable. Now, let's watch the spectacle unfold.
Another element of this. On the present densities, you're going to add 3.4 million, or homes for 3.4 million people with your 1.5 million houses. On your own figures, we're also going to add to our population 2.5 million people over this same period. Are you content that more than 5 out of 7 new homes will go to immigrants?
Well, that's not the truth, and that's not the case.
That's what will happen.
Well, that's not the reality, because we've,
where
in particular, in
where the
social
2.5
housing.
million immigrants that are in Rachel Reeves' budget figures going to turn up? Where are they going to live?
Well, there's plenty of housing in the UK, but the houses, especially social
Hang on.
affordable
You can't,
homes
on the
that
one
we're
hand, say
building.
we've got to build this 1.5 million houses, and then say there's plenty of housing already.
There is plenty of housing, Trevor, already, but there's not enough for the people that desperately need it. So the homes, especially under our affordable homes programme, which is social and affordable housing, they will be there for people who desperately need them, local people. We've already outlined how we're going to support veterans and people who are fleeing domestic violence.
Okay.
Councils need homes for people that are on the waiting list. I've already announced changes to the right to buy, making sure they
But this doesn't quite make sense.
so that we can deliver
Deputy
the
Prime
houses
Minister,
they desperately need.
Deputy Prime Minister, doesn't quite make sense. You start the interview by telling me that there's a housing crisis. When I remind you that you have said yourselves as a government, we're going to need 2.5 million migrants. Some of them, by the way, people are going to build the houses. Suddenly, there's a lot of housing. Where are these people going to go?
Well, Trevor, first of all, when you say about building as well, the previous government did use migrant labour far too much instead of actually building skills here in the UK. I've announced £140 million for new construction hubs so that we can train people here to deliver those housing. So I don't accept that we're going to bring migrants in for that. We've always said that actually we need to skill our own people up. But equally, we need to build the homes that people need. Nobody's had a focus on social housing for a generation, and I'm going to build those homes because far too many people at the moment are waiting on council housing lists, and I've got to fix that.
I really wish we had more time.
Streamline planning. We just can't carry on like this. You know, we're not getting the development we need, we're not getting the houses we need. We've got 8 times average income for first-time buyers. People are priced out of getting a home, and I'm determined to change it. And Trevor, I've been underestimated quite a lot in my life, and I wouldn't allow the Prime Minister to put that target up there if I didn't think I could meet it. And I'm determined to do it because having a home is not just about a home, it's about security, it's about a job, it's about raising a family, and far too many people now can't do that.
There's never going to be any underestimation of Angela Rayner in this studio. So let's just start from this point. If we are talking in 4 years' time, can you guarantee you're going to be able to say, Trevor, I've done it?
I'm determined to make sure by the end of this Parliament that I meet that target. I hate failure, Trevor, and that target is my target, so I've got to deliver it. But it does mean that we're going to have to make real changes to the planning system. We've already put £5 billion next year into additional funding into housing, £500 million into affordable homes. There has to be lots of different parts of the system that works, and that includes, and I want to reassure people listening to this, infrastructure.
Well, I want to come to all that. Let's come to all that. And let's just deal with this lovely word that you've just used, streamlining.
Yes.
I see the Prime Minister this morning is saying that local councils will get more powers. but they will also have more responsibilities, and they are basically not to stand in the way. Does that streamlining mean that local councils are going to be more powerful as long as they do what you tell them?
Well, kind of in a way, yes, but it'll be part of a consultation with them. So, first of all, our national planning...
you're not going to consult. If you're telling them today, it's perfectly reasonable. You're the boss. If you're telling them today, we're consulting you, but at the end of the day, you're going to do what you tell you, what we tell you. That's a clear message from Angela Rayner.
So let me say it simply. I consulted on the National Planning Policy Framework from July when we were elected. Next week, I will be outlining that structure. So it'll be clarity from the centre. Mandatory targets for local councils mean they have to have a local plan, and that will be developed with local people. So therefore, the planning nationally with the local plan means that we all know what the strategy is, we all know where the development is going to be. There is no need then for things to be constantly clogged up in a system that is causing chaos. So people know where we're going and they know the destination, they've inputted into that process, and then we're going to deliver the homes we need.
Look, I get the rhetoric, but in the end, what happens when they say, OK, Angela, we love it, we love the plan, but you know what? We cannot build this number of houses in this place because we won't have it.
Be taken into account, but we can't have a situation where we have a desperate housing crisis and we can't resolve things like nutrient neutrality, which we believe we can, and making sure that we can make sure that nature's protected, but we can't have a situation where we can't build those houses. So there's mitigations you can make, but I cannot accept the situation as it stands currently.
So seriously, some of these regulations are going to go, as far as you're concerned. They've got to go.
They will be clarity to ensure that we don't see buildings stalled for years and years. And you will see that next week. We are being very punchy about it because we will build the homes that we desperately need.
You say you're being punchy, but this is not very Angela Rayner. Why can't you just say, look, guys, the newts, the black-legged kittiwakes, the bats, you're going to have to take second place to getting houses for people.
Well, I believe we can offset, look after them, but at the same time not stop building.
All right.
Because we can't have a situation where a newt's more protected than people who desperately need housing. What we need is a process which says protect the nature and wildlife, but not at the expense of us building the houses we need. We could do both.
Angela Rayner on Sky News discussing housing. What could possibly go wrong? Well, as it turns out, quite a lot. In what can only be described as a masterclass in political acrobatics, the deputy leader of the Labour Party managed to contradict herself, stumble over basic facts, and leave the audience with more questions than answers. If you were expecting clarity, competence, or even a remotely consistent position, you were in for a major disappointment. But then again, should we really be surprised? The segment began with a seemingly straightforward question. How does Labour plan to house the increasing population, including the 2.5 million additional immigrants expected over the next few years, while ensuring that local people don't lose out? A fair and pressing concern, given that we already have a housing crisis and a never-ending social housing waiting list. Rayner, in her usual fashion, launched into a response that was equal parts vague and contradictory. First, she confidently claimed that there's plenty of housing in the UK. Yes, you heard that right. Despite years of Labour politicians hammering on about a housing crisis, apparently, there's actually no shortage at all. But wait, just moments later, she switched gears, insisting that we must build 1.5 million new homes. So which is it, Angela? Is there plenty of housing? Or is there a desperate need for new builds? Because it really can't be both at the same time. But Labour has never let minor inconveniences like logic or consistency get in the way of a good soundbite. The interviewer, clearly unimpressed by this display of mental gymnastics, pressed her on the numbers. If 2.5 million immigrants are arriving, and Labour is only building 1.5 million houses, how exactly does that work? Surely, even for Labour's questionable maths, this equation doesn't add up? Rayner, looking increasingly flustered, resorted to the classic tactic of politicians caught in a contradiction, talking in circles. She assured us that social housing would be prioritised for those who desperately need it. But who exactly falls into that category? Veterans? Domestic violence survivors? Low-income British families? Or, as history has shown, will Labour prioritise newly arrived migrants over the very people they claim to represent? Of course, when cornered, Rayner fell back on another favourite Labour strategy, throwing money at the problem. She announced a £140 million investment in construction hubs to train British workers to build these homes. Admirable, if only it weren't coming from the same party that previously relied on migrant labour to fill gaps in the construction industry. Now, suddenly, we're supposed to believe Labour has had a change of heart and wants to skill up British workers? Call me sceptical. And then we moved on to the question of planning and local councils. In a dazzling display of doublethink, Rayner assured us that councils would be given more power over planning decisions, but also that they would be forced to meet strict targets set by the central government. So, more power, as long as they do exactly what Labour tells them. Got it. When the interviewer pointed out that this sounded an awful lot like centralised control disguised as local empowerment, Rayner did what she does best, avoided answering the question altogether. This led to another moment of classic Labour hypocrisy. For years, they have championed environmental regulations as an essential safeguard. Yet now, with their housing targets looking increasingly unrealistic, Rayner suggested that some of these regulations might need to be streamlined to ensure housing projects aren't delayed. So, after years of branding anyone who dared question the feasibility of these regulations as environmentally reckless, Labour is now quite happy to scrap them when it suits their narrative. The bats, birds, and newts they once fought so hard to protect. Well, they'll just have to adjust. But the real highlight came when Rayner was asked the golden question. In 4 years, can you guarantee that Labour will have met these targets? Her response: a mixture of vague optimism and empty promises. I hate failure, she proclaimed. Well, that's reassuring, though perhaps not the most convincing argument when coming from a party that has consistently failed to deliver on its pledges. So, what have we learned from this enlightening display? Labour wants to build more houses but insists there are already plenty of them. They claim to support local councils while simultaneously stripping them of decision-making power. They stand by strict environmental regulations until they become inconvenient. And when challenged, their leadership resorts to the usual Labour playbook of contradictions, avoidance, and meaningless platitudes. Rayner's performance on Sky News wasn't just a disaster, it was a perfect encapsulation of everything that's wrong with Labour's housing policy. Confused, contradictory, and utterly lacking in credibility. But don't take my word for it, let's watch the chaos unfold. And there you have it, another day, another Labour disaster. Angela Rayner's performance on Sky News was a masterclass in confusion, contradiction, and political waffle. If this is the level of competence we can expect from a potential Labour government, then heaven help us all. They want to build houses, but also insist we have plenty. They want local councils to have more power, but only if they obey orders. They're all for environmental protections, until they get in the way of their own unrealistic promises. Labour's approach to housing is like watching someone try to assemble IKEA furniture without reading the instructions. Frantic, frustrating, and bound to collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. But hey, maybe by the next interview, Rayner will have figured out what she actually believes. Or maybe she'll just keep spinning in circles, hoping we don't notice. What do you think? Is Labour's housing plan doomed from the start? Or are we just being too harsh? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown of Labour's latest shambles, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. We'll be here, cutting through the nonsense, because someone has to. See you next time.